Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna show you how to install Final Fantasy 11 on Linux. And I'm gonna demonstrate this on Arch Linux, but the steps should be pretty similar or the same on any distribution. So whether you're on Debian, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, or even on a handheld like Steam Deck, which I believe is based on Arch Linux, so should be able to follow the exact same steps that I will be doing on my computer. The only differences is gonna be which dependencies and packages that we are needing, but the steps for applications is the same on all platforms or distributions. As for the Steam Deck, since that has a desktop and big picture, I don't know what we call it, like the Steam mode. So you need to be in the desktop mode so you can actually install things, because we are going to need to be in the terminal for some of the steps. But to begin, let's go over to a browser. And I'm also on a window manager, so not everything is going to look exactly the same for you, but the steps should be pretty much identical all over the board. So for Ubuntu or Debian based, really, since Ubuntu Debian is based on the same thing, so you would grab this line and paste it in your terminal. It's not going to work on my end since I'm on Arch, but the baseline is that you need a 32-bit architecture to install the Wine packages, and Wine is what's make it possible for us to install and play a Windows game on Linux. As for Arch, first of all you're gonna need to enable multilib, which you can do by editing a configuration file. So probably you have a Nano installed on your system. That's, I think, coming prepackaged in most installations these days. So you would do nano, paste in /etc pacman.com and give your root password. And you're gonna want to look for something called multilib if you have it, this line. If you don't, you need to add it. And after you've done that, you're going to want to do this command, sudo pacman-syu. That's just to update your mirrors, and that would look like this. So now I actually have some updates, but I'm not gonna install them right now. But basically you want to make sure that your mirrors is up to date, otherwise you won't be able to download. You might even get an error. And then for still here on Arch based systems, so you have Arch, Endeavor, Manjaro, Archcraft, there's a handful, Arco Linux, there's a lot of Arch based systems out on the market today. You would paste this string of code in your terminal to install all of these packages. And if you're on Fedora, you would run these commands. And like I said, on Debian it's pretty straightforward. Just need to enable 32-bit architecture, and then here is all the packages and dependencies that you're going to need. And once that's done, you will be able to launch Lutris. So you open your app launcher. In my case, I have to use Rofi, and I have already a shortcut here. And I'm gonna demonstrate how to do this. I already had this installed, so I'm not gonna be able to show everything on video, but I will explain all the steps. So you press on the plus icon, and let me move this so see it like it will probably look on your end. So you will go to search the Lutris website for installers and enter Final Fantasy 11 Online. Pick the top one. And in here, my recommendation is going to be this one, full US version with D8VK. And that will install everything, and it will also configure it with V8VK, which is like a replacement or emulation for DirectX. So it should work as just as fine as on Windows. I have played this game for probably close to 20 years, but on Linux the past year and a half maybe, and I haven't really experienced any issues when it comes to the game and the performance. So we press install. Here you can select if you want to create a desktop shortcut, if you want to create a menu shortcut, like this. And I have created myself, but I'm sure this option will do basically mimic what I did. And you can also create a shortcut in your Steam library. So if you're on a Steam Deck, that's probably preferable, because then you can just launch it from your Steam Deck library. It's pretty simple. And the installation directory is where it's gonna obviously be installed, and set up your wine bottle, as it's called. I'm just gonna add a 2 so it doesn't conflict with my main install, and then press continue. And here you have the option to either let Lutris download all the install files, so the RAR files and the .exe file. You can also pre-select a local file, which I believe I have here. You can select them here, or like I said, let Lutris do the downloading. By default it will cache the file, but it will also delete it after it installed. So if you want to keep the files for safety or for backup reasons, because the installation may fail and you have to start over, it's not uncommon when it comes to Lutris and wine. So really up to you. But for speeding up the video, I will just pick my local files, so this will be a little bit faster. Games. Depending on your internet speed, this might take a while, but I guess for most people it's not too bad. And once that's done, you press install. And it's gonna do everything in the background, so you're not gonna get like a pop-up where you have to click next and stuff like that. You're gonna see this occasionally, that is configuring the wine bottle. And then you're gonna see a lot of gibberish here. The important thing here is generally looking up here where it says extracting installer archive. Right now it's gonna change text as it goes, but if it says exit with error code 256 or something else, but indicating that it's actually working, then it failed. You also get a status code in this log here, but for most people these things won't really tell you a whole lot. But I will speed up the video, and once it's done we'll get back. Alright, looks like it completed without any errors. So next you can select launch or close. I'm gonna select close, and then it will show up in this list. And of course for you might only have one entry here, depending on if you installed other games through Lutris in the past. As for configuration, we can do a couple things. So You can select a new name if you don't want it to say Final Fantasy 11 Online. You can set executable arguments if needed for regular full boot or to play online. I would say you don't really need to edit anything here. When it comes to runner options, you can select the wine version, and by default you're probably gonna be on one of these options, because when you launch Lutris the first time it's gonna install a Proton version, and the recommendation when it comes to Windower, if you want to use that one, is using, I believe it is 8.26. You can probably stay with the default, but in a bit later in the video I will show you how to install older versions or another version in general. If you scroll down, we have the DLL overrides, and here it's gonna default to DirectX 8, which is fine for our need, for this game at least. And in system options, you don't really need to change anything here, except you might want to change some things here in the environmental variables. So by default it's gonna display a on-screen HUD for FPS, which is gonna be up here in this corner. So if you want that not to show, you would just delete it. Something I have done on my end, because I enjoy playing the game in 60 FPS. You can add another entry called BXVK, oops, if I can spell, underscore frame underscore rate. Press enter, and in the values tab you just enter 60, for example. I found setting it to 61 seems to be the sweet spot for my systems, and that's gonna be your frame rate limiter. So if you use in Windows, you can use the config plugin to set your game FPS to 60 or uncapped. If you select the uncapped, it would just go up to 61 FPS in this case, because you're telling the game how high it's allowed to unlock the frame rate. And then save. And to play, you're gonna get this little pop-up, which you can toggle this one. It will default to the option you selected, but let's say you wanted to do some configuration for play online. You get up this. Yours probably gonna look a little bit different, since again I'm on a window manager, so I don't have all the window decorations. So let's say you wanted to use a gamepad, you would toggle that one and go into the gamepad configuration. I don't have any gamepads connected, so I won't get the configuration window, but you will get a new window where you can set all the keys for in all of the inputs, and also test the keypad. And you can also toggle here if you want to have the sounds on and whether it should be running in window mode or full screen mode. And next, let's take a look on the Final Fantasy 11 configuration. So here you can select between the modes if you want to have it in full screen, windowed or borderless, and which resolution you like to play on. And if you like to increase the UI size or scaling, you can select a preset for your quality, select your brightness. You definitely want to untick the opening movie on startup, because on Linux it either will crash the game or you're gonna just have a black screen. So just save yourself some headache and just untick it. For graphics, you can have your drawing distance and aspect ratio. Bring that as high as you can. And for the rest of the settings, play around to see what you like to have. I usually put fonts on standard because I don't like the newer look on the font, so I prefer the older look, but it's up to you. Features, you don't really have too much here. You can back up your saving, in-game savings if you like, or in-game settings, but you can also back it up on your character selection screen. And the file path where you're where it's gonna save the settings and screenshots if you take any, and this is gonna be an emulated path since we are on Linux. So I think it'd be easier if I show you in a different place. So let's say you wanted to access the... Oops, this looks like crap. There we go. So your installation will be found by default in a games folder, and then go into your Lutris folder or wine folder. So we created the one with number 2. And then you have your drive C here, will be users, your username, and then it will be in documents, my games, Final Fantasy, blah blah blah. So here is your virtual Windows folder, basically. And on the others tab you have again some sound settings. I don't think Create Shortcut's gonna do much because you're in a emulated environment, basically. As for gamepad settings, same here. If you want to enable the gamepad, I see it's cutting off some text here. Might just be on my end, but it says enable gamepad, and then I think you might have a drop down somewhere here as well. Might be hidden since I don't have any controller installed. And generally for most controllers, if it's like an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller, you want to use X input, the F preset. I know from experience myself, when I've been using like a DualSense controller with cable, I've been having to use like pattern E. Not showing all the buttons here, but that's working the best for me in the past. And yeah, then you could launch. I think it should work. Hi, Future Johan here. I noticed that the Play Online music here is very, very loud, so just a pre-warning for you who's installing this on your system, that it's gonna be very loud. So adjust your volume for the Play Online viewer. Basically what I was saying here is that showing that the Play Online viewer works out of the box, and you will just update it here. So back to the video. But let's say you wanted to use Windowware. So I'm not going to be able to show all the steps here because it's expecting a certain name on the wine folder. That's kind of how they have configured the script, install script. I think it's the Windowware team that has created that script. But you do the same steps as before. You search Lutris for an installer. Enter Final Fantasy 11 again. And then you can select either if you want to use Windowware 4, which is obviously the recommendation, and you can also select Windowware 5, which is the developer branch. And you press install, and it's only gonna download the windowware.exe file. And I think it's gonna fail on the next step. Actually, we're gonna abort, because I think it's gonna attempt install it into my my normal version. But the same steps applies here. It's gonna configure all the dependencies that's needed, and that's going to be, let me pull up a website for that. I'll drop the link in the description just so you guys have it. windowware.net/linux. So the base dependencies are wine, of course, and if you're installing this in Well, right now it's September 2024. It's gonna be on Wine 9.x. So we are good on this dependency. And when you install the windowware in Lutris, it's gonna configure .NET 4.6.2 and a dependency called GDI+. It's a, I believe, text utility. And it's gonna install something called core fonts. It's like your Arial, New Times Roman, those basic fonts in Windows. And done that via a tool called Winetricks. And Winetricks is the kind of the front end and back end for Wine to configure it. So if you want to install certain DLL files or enable certain Windows services, install additional fonts, stuff like that. And it's also gonna need a DirectX 8 compatible layer, like 8 D8VK, which we talked about before. You could also, in a more advanced setup, configure DD Voodoo 2, which is very popular on Windows, but they are basically the same thing, just two different tools. And then it recommended 8.25 for Proton, or sorry, it's not recommended. It's recommended 8.26, but it tells you here how it might be labeled. So it could be either Wine GE or it could be just the Wine GE8. So you can have Proton in the name or not Proton. And then you do these steps as we already gone through, installing the US version of the game with the pre-patch with D8VK. And yeah, configure for gamepad. You have the window list up here that we just talked about. And post installation, both games gonna be in this name, so you can configure it and just add windowware or just rename it to windowware, whatever you want to do. And the FPS display word we went through as well. Some time ago I wrote up a guide on this very topic as well. So let's see if I can find. Is it just FFXI? And if you just search Linux install, I think you should find it. Here it is. When I wrote this guide I was on Manjaro, but it's also based on Arch, so the steps is similar. So you would install Lutris, all these steps as we already gone through. And for installing Proton and Wine versions, you can use an application called Proton Up Qt. And to get that application, you can do it the easy way, which is installing it through FlatHub. And I showed this in my Arch Linux installation guide, but the short version is that on Arch you just do sudo -s flatpak, and then it will ask you to install it. For other operating system in Linux, you would go to the setup page here and select your version of Linux. So let's say you were on Linux Mint. Oh, never mind, can't even use it apparently. It's built in even. I should probably read before I speak. You already have it in Mint. I know on Debian you have to install the application through apt, and then depending if you're using GNOME or KDE, you would add the backend, and lastly you would add the Plat hub to the repository with this command. Easy peasy. And once all that is installed, you could launch Proton Qt. I have two shortcuts now for some reason. And here you would select the Lutris, and by default you would have, I believe, 8.26 version. And if you wanted to get 25, which I installed manually, you would just go to add version, pick it here in the list. There's a lot of available versions. And install. And it will do it for you. And then you just restart Lutris, and when you configure your game here, you just pick it in the list under runner options. Alright. So last step that we will do, let's say your Windows installation is done now. And in my plugins and add-ons configuration, I use Consolas font often. And that's not installed by default, so you would see nothing in the game. So to do that, you would highlight window over here and press Wine Tricks. And if everything works, we should get a window. And then you select the default wine prefix. You want to help statistics? No, I don't want to give you that. This will only show up once probably. I haven't seen that before, so I guess that's new. So here you do install a font. And just double check that it's the prefix here is the correct one, so you're installing it into the right one. So now let's say I wanted Consolas, I just pick it and press OK and it will install. One thing here, do not press all fonts, because that's gonna mess everything up. Trust me, I speak from experience. And you're gonna get a warning that you are... Oh, I guess I managed to press OK. It basically says that you're trying to install a 64-bit dependency or whatever we want to call it, and the game is installed as a 32-bit, but that's just a warning, it doesn't really impact anything. So for Consolas it actually downloads a PowerPoint application. Not really sure why, but I think that's a thing that Microsoft require you for getting the font, I guess. It will download this and then it will place the font file in the appropriate location in your virtual Windows installation. So I will cut this part until we are at the end. Alright, that's done. I didn't catch what it said there after it finished, but I think it's just a progress bar. So now we have Consolas installed. So we just cancel out of this. And let's open the game so I can show you that it actually are working. So I will skip until we are at the play button. Alright, so we are getting closer to getting online play, and we have a maintenance. Is that today or tomorrow? I think it's... God, I hope it's tomorrow. I haven't spent my hallmarks. Close the warning and press play. And of course, for you, you're gonna get a version update if it's a fresh install. Future Johan here again. Again, the game is very, very loud here, so again, adjust your audio levels in whatever audio application you're using in your Linux installation. But basically what I'm saying here is that just showcasing that the game is launching, and obviously my game is slightly modded, visually at least. So I have modded fonts, or not fonts, but the text on the buttons, and the logo types is edited slightly as well. Okay, sorry for the rough cut here, but yeah, the noise from the game was so loud, so didn't make sense. Maybe I should have split the game sound into a separate audio track, and we could just have cut out part of the game sound, but lesson learned. But basically, this is how you get Final Fantasy 11 installed on Linux. So if you encounter any issues or have any questions when it comes to installing the dependencies, feel free to drop them below, and I'll try to answer them and help you. If not, then best of luck and enjoy the game on Linux. Goodbye.